All right. Hello, everybody. I'm pretty sure I have the audio working, but if someone just comment on YouTube, making sure that everything is good, then we should be all right. And so before we get started, I also want to mention, if you are watching this as part of Battle Royale 14, it should be streaming to YouTube, and then on the Discord for Battle Royale, I'm streaming it to the workshop. So if anybody can tell me in Jam General if everything's working all right, that'd be perfect. Yeah, so welcome to community game development or open source game development. I wanted to change it up from the title, which was like open source game development, which has a lot of implications of like open source software, to instead looking at the community perspective, because that's a lot of what I'll be focusing on in today's talk. But that being said, I'm also going to talk a lot about open source. And so the names are interchangeable, I think, for the purposes of today. And I do also want to mention, this is a talk for like the workshop section of Battle Royale 14. Where Battle Royale is a sort of a LAN party weekend here in Ottawa for Carleton University, U Ottawa, and potentially other schools around. And so lots of games going on, but there's also a game jam happening, which is pretty nifty. And so I was invited to talk about a project that I'm working on and just experiences of mine in the open source world. Yes, I see in the comments my camera's a little overexposed. I have not figured out how to fix my webcam on Linux, and so I'm the whitest of whites. But you'll have to bear with me there. All right, so a little bit about myself. My name is Forrest. Um, I'm a student in Ottawa at Carleton University. I'm also a GitHub campus expert, so I got like this fancy box over here, and I'm wearing my GitHub campus expert hoodie today. Pretty cool. I love open source quite a lot, which is, of course, why I'm talking about stuff today. But also just in general, a lot of stuff that I use is open source, and I really stand behind this idea that you can pretty much do everything that you need with open source software. And so this talk itself is actually a little bit of a repurposed one from a talk that I gave a while ago for Free Software Europe. They were having a I Love Free Software Day on Valentine's Day, and so I gave it a similar talk to them. And I also have my Hacktoberfest 2021 t-shirt on as well. So trying to represent as much as I can here. And I'm a Rustacean. And so we got little Ferris right here on the screen. And I'll be talking a little bit about how Rust allows us to do what we do so well in the context of the projects that I work on. And so let me dive right into a little bit of understanding some stuff here. And so first off, what is open source? And so this is a term that to me was something that I grew up a lot with. And to a lot of people, they might look at it as this like very nebulous thing that it's like you can either have like maybe closed software that's made by a company like Photoshop or something, and then you can have like free software that's open source. But one big thing is that open source doesn't just mean free. It means that you can go and look at the source code. You can potentially contribute to it. You can potentially go off and work on your own copy that's separate from the original copy. And there's a lot of different ways that open source works. But to most people, what matters the most is the free software side. And so as a developer myself, I'm super interested in being able to contribute to stuff that, let's say I'm working on some web backend or something. If I see something not working in the way that I want to, I love the ability to be able to go and change it and make improvements, make fixes, whatever. But then on the other hand, for a lot of people, it's the benefit of being able to just work with free stuff. And so I stand a lot behind this. I love a lot of the mentalities that come along with open source and the community behind it. Now, today I'll be talking a lot about a specific project I'm working on called Valoran. And Valoran is an open source game that is built in Rust. And I've been working on this project for a few years so far. And so to describe it a little bit, I mean, it looks quite similar to Minecraft. It was originally inspired by a game called Cube World. And after the original developer of Cube World was more absent in the later stages of development, some people got together online and said, hey, how about we make our own open source version of this game and explore some of the mechanics and dynamics that we really appreciate from the original game. And so with Valoran, it started as a project in 2018. And so like mid 2018, that was like the first iteration of the engine. And then come 2019, the engine was rewritten at the beginning of the year. And so it's open source under the GPL3 license. And so when we talk about licenses at open source, we talk about what do you have to do with the code, or rather, if you want to use the code, what are you legally bound to? And so for a lot of software that's out in the wild and is open source, a lot of it uses very open licenses like MIT and Apache 2, and I think Zlib as well is a pretty big one that I've been hearing a lot about recently. And these licenses allow you to do pretty much whatever you want. And then the reason that, so GPL3 on the other hand, is one that says you can take the code that we are working on and you can change it, you can resell it, you can do anything that you want with it, as long as you make sure that you keep the source open. Whereas MIT says like you can take code, you can close it off, you can do whatever you want with it. And so for us, it was really important to have it any derivatives of Valoran be open so that we can make sure that people aren't just like taking it and like we've seen some like pretty yucky things happening in like just like the space of people like claiming that they made this entire thing and building an entire company just saying that, oh, we made this game as everything is ours, and that is not allowed under our license. But I won't go into like too deep into the legal side because we have a lot more fun things to talk about. And so, as I mentioned, we'll dive a little bit into how the game is made. And the reason I want to actually, wait, do I go down? No, I don't. Oh yeah, so we got some nice set of pictures here. The reason I want to dive more into how Valoran is made is that there's a lot that we're able to achieve from working in the open that we haven't seen in other games. And one of the biggest things behind this is that we're not constrained by restrictions of companies that need to ship something in time, need to make deadlines, need to make investors happy. But instead, we can really explore these very deep and profound ideas that we see in other games. And so one of our biggest inspirations alongside Cube World is Dwarf Fortress. And Dwarf Fortress is this amazing game that I think it's more graphical with sprites now, but it used to be like you'd play it in the terminal and or like everything has characters, and it's not about how necessarily the world looks, but instead what's going on in the world. And so in Dwarf Fortress, you focus on building a small like little town of dwarfs, and you have to get them to mine, and you give them instructions on how you should build this area. And under the hood, there's a lot of magic that's going on, and so you see a lot of very interesting dynamics being created by your dwarves as they start to build what you want. You see them interacting with history of the world. You see them making decisions based on much more intricate things that gives the world a lot more life. And so this is what we really want to explore with Valoran is, can we break down a lot of these things that we like from a lot of different games? And if I'm really inspired by something that another game does, can I just like spend a ton of time working on this feature? And we've seen this come out as a lot of what the developers are capable of doing. And so some examples of this, we have a world generation system that focuses a lot on realistic erosion. And the benefit of this is it gives us mountains that look very realistic, and it gives us rivers that go downhill into basins. And then we also have a system that allows us to place villages around the world where context matters. And so, for example, a village that's placed in the middle of the desert is going to have a harder time surviving than one that's placed by a river in the middle of in the woods. And so that system is tying into our economy simulation system. And we have recently, or not necessarily recently, but we're working on integrating a lot more of our economy sim into the game. So then that can say, okay, well, if this village in the desert, maybe they have some resource that can make them a lot of money, then they should be trading with the other towns that can get them other resources that they need, and then building up an economy based on the resources in the game, based on what professions there are, and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of incredibly complex stuff going on here, but we have some really amazing people coming in and working on these different topics. All right, so I want to dive a tiny bit into some code ideas and stuff like that. And so we use Rust for our project, and Rust is a pretty new language. Came out in 2015 for like the 1.0 version, and we're really lucky that we've been able to sort of adopt Rust right as the project started. It was built in Rust, but the choice of using Rust became incredibly valuable to us because we are one of the flagship projects that are using Rust to show off what it can do for game development. And some of the biggest things that we've been able to do from it include like our multiplayer server is incredibly like multi-threaded, and we gain a lot of benefits from how the compiler works. And to dive into this a little bit, if you haven't heard of Rust before, then you haven't heard of all of these ideas of, you might not have heard of these ideas of memory safety and like these guarantees that Rust gives us. And so Rust compiler gives us a lot of benefits from just knowing that if our code compiles, it will probably run. And so what this sort of means is that you're going to get yelled at by the compiler quite a lot. And this term is sort of known as like fighting with the compiler. But then once the code compiles, you can be a lot more confident that everything is going to work properly. And so this has a lot of implications when you're working on like larger teams. And so we sort of call this like the contract with the compiler. So by following like some strict rules that the compiler puts in place, it means that like while the programs are running, they can't run into a lot of different problems that we might see in other languages for game development. Like C++ is riddled with a lot of potential for like seg faults, doing things with memory that you aren't intended on doing or whatever. But then on the other hand, if we look at C#, which is another very popular language for game development, C# has a garbage collector that has to run periodically. And so to a certain extent, you're bound by this process that's running in the background that you can't really control, and will edit or not really edit, but it will cause small delays in the game every once in a while. And so from this guarantee, this contract with the compiler, this means that we can work together on quite a large team and not have to worry as much about our code breaking the code of other people. And so this is especially important when we have someone working on this like massive system that overhauls. Like right now, one of the big ones we're doing is I think modular weapons. That's a really big one right now. We just merged in like another big thing, which was like Site 2 towns, and so like the ability to have towns sort of be generated in sort of like a 2.0 way from the original way we were doing it. And so with all of these large features, they can really do a lot of things. And what we have to go look for in these merge requests is much more often, is this optimized properly, rather than do I imagine this is going to break something that I'm working on. And so this isn't like 100% of a guarantee. There's still a lot of times where we can look at something architecturally and say it's not gonna, like, this might not work, but we gain a lot of benefits that allow us to work at like quite a fast speed for being an open source project. All right, so we have. All right, I want to go to this slide. Community now, I think. Oh yeah, go down here. Okay, so I wanted to go to this slide right here and kind of talk a little bit about the community behind Valorant. And so I described already, we started a project in 2018, and I'll add a little bit that like the main point that I had discussed at the beginning of this talk was the idea that it's really about community game development. It's not necessarily just open source game development. And this is the idea that we are working on this product because we are really interested in having this game. We're not working on it because we're getting paid or because it's something we have to do. And so for us, we've seen over 200 contributors from all around the world work on the game. And these are people who are artists and composers and designers and students and professionals of all different ages and nationality, everything. And so to me, this is incredibly powerful. The fact that the barrier to entry on this project is you come into our Discord and ask if you can work on something, and then some of the core developers and other programmers might point you in a direction, rather than having to go through like an application process at a job and but like really just work on what you want or what you're interested in, rather than like what you're told to. On top of all of these contributors, and I should also mention, these are ones that like we've seen making commits on like our Git repositories. This isn't necessarily taking into consideration all of the people in our Discord who are helping out with ideas. Maybe if someone's working on an art piece, they might not be familiar with Git, so someone else might have committed it for them. And so I've been working on like sort of a sub project of trying to make like a credits of everybody who's contributed to Valorant, but it's definitely a nebulous task to get everybody's names. And so next up, I want to dive into presentation. Like I'll come back and forth a little bit. I want to take a look at some of the other interesting things that I can tell you about working on a project in the open, just because some of the stuff is quite available. I'm just going to turn off Dark Reader here. Sorry for all the people who much prefer the like nice dark mode. Okay, I just want to zoom in here. Zoom. Let's go like 150-ish. Yeah, there we go. So I want to do a bit of a walkthrough from our finances. And the interesting thing for this is just because like when you think of like how money works with open source, oftentimes you think, well, if it's free, then like why would they care about having money? And so for us, we host a server in Germany that is like our main game server. And so Valorant is a multiplayer game. You can play it. You can like host your own servers and play like at home with your friends, just fine. LAN parties, that type of thing. But we have a main game server that we use, and this game server, we host release parties on it, and we've seen up to 195 people on the server at the same time, exploring the same world, in the same areas, all of this kind of stuff. And so for us, we track like how much we're paying for server costs. And let me dive into like, okay, here's a pretty big month. So March 2021, we probably had a release here. Maybe we were trying some like just some experiments on different servers and stuff. It looks like I or myself or someone else on the team went through quite a few. But we can take a look here, and I translate everything to American dollars. And we can see here that like that month was it cost $219, but then we also um, got a certain amount of money through donations, and so we are on Open Collective, and this is like a platform similar to Patreon, but it's a lot more designed for like open sort of projects, and people can make donations. And this is really great because so yeah, we can see here some of the larger donations. And so one really cool one is we got a $1,000 donation from Red Hat. And so Red Hat does a lot of stuff in the like Linux distribution space, and so very cool getting something from them. And then we've also gotten a lot from different people either in the Rust community or people who are interested in just the game. And so this is really cool. So every month we make like a certain amount. We have people who like backers like $5 a month, $25 a month, and so on and so forth. And so in March 2021, you're made $207. In some future months, like it goes up and down how much we make. And then there's probably like a recent month here. Okay, so I feel like November 2021, I haven't tracked for like December, January, February, and that like the $1,000 is probably in there somewhere. So we have that. I also keep track of all of the donations that are made, and so we can see here. Oh yeah, okay. So I guess I probably do have the month with like the $1,000 donation, because we can like see in this graph like just I'm tracking how much we've brought in per month. And so right now I'm sort of making the assumption that we're making about $200 per month, and so we can spend at most $200 if like on server stuff. And like I try my best to keep track of this, and this is like an open document. I don't know where it's posted, but anybody can go and look at it. And so yeah, like we're spending about $150 a month from the looks of it. So this is sort of like how we work with money, and then kind of diving into a little bit about like how the servers are used itself. We have the site that anybody can go to as well, grafana.valorant.net, and this will show you all of the stats about the main game server that we're currently exposing. And if we're not exposing something, it's more likely that we just haven't added it rather than it being like something we want to hide from people. We don't expose any like user information or anything like that. It's just macro metrics of the server itself. And so we can take a look at the game server. And so right now we have 40 people online on the main game server. Over like the last 6 hours, we're about there. We're staying about there. But something that's like really cool that we can show off a lot is like every little thing about how all of the systems are working, about how like server memory is. Oh, interesting. We got like these spikes of memory. Like let's zoom in on one of these and take a look at it here. Okay, so we had a spike here, like 200 megabytes for a few minutes, I think. So when we're diagnosing stuff, we can like very easily go in. Anybody on the team, anybody at all can go in and look at a lot of this stuff, and we can like take a look at, is there something that was kind of going wrong here at this time, and explore what might be going on. And for myself, one of the big things that I focus on a lot with these graphs is making sure that when we have our release parties and we have these hundreds of people coming in playing, that we're able to like our server is able to handle it quite well. And so right now this is working on a server with 16 CPU cores, and then our release party we normally do on with 48 CPU cores. And so the 48 is like the dedicated server. This is just like a cloud server because it's cheaper to leave on all the time. Network's an interesting thing. We're transmitting like almost 10 megabytes per second for like the 40 players, and like there's a lot of optimizations that we can like that we'll be looking at doing in the future to try and reduce how much time the server takes, sort of like each physics tick or like each server tick. We want to reduce the amount of data we're sending to clients. We can also explore like different systems. How much are they doing? Let me see here. Let's take a look at this one. So right now we can see like our agent system, every tick is taking 40 milliseconds. Our physics system is taking 64 milliseconds. And what you might be thinking is like, okay, well, our goal is 30 ticks per second. And that means that each tick has 33 milliseconds to execute. And so how can something take 67 milliseconds or 40 milliseconds? And this is because they're being distributed across all of the different cores of the server. And so like the agent system and the physics system are designed to be as split up as possible so that they get off the main thread and the main thread can just power through its work as quickly as possible. All right, so I've really dove really deep by accident on this topic of some graph stuff because I love talking about it. Whenever we come to like a release party, I always explain this stuff over again because it's like super cool. But let's take a step back and like go more towards the open source side and like the sort of meta view. All right. Oh, cool. Someone can be our like 1400th star on GitLab here if they want. GitLab is the platform we use as our main version control website, and we have a mirror to GitHub as well. But the reason we don't use GitHub is so at the beginning, like when Valorant was starting and choosing a platform, it might have been GitHub, and then we moved to GitLab when like there was like the Microsoft acquisition. Like a lot of open source projects moved off GitHub, I know. But the reason that we haven't looked very heavily into moving back, or rather, I spent a lot of time kind of like considering which one we're using. The biggest reason is that GitHub's LFS, large file storage, charges you obscene amounts for projects that use like that store files in there. And so in communicating with GitHub's like support, they recommended to me that instead of using large file storage, I just check in every file into the repository, which is a terrible solution, and it would make our repository massive. But then GitLab is fine with us using LFS, and so we're more than happy to be on GitLab. And actually, we can see if I go to where is it? Projects, explore. Yeah, so if we go most stars, Valorant is like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th most starred project on GitLab. We're catching up to GitLab itself. Like if we surpass GitLab on GitLab, that'd be pretty cool. But of course, like these magnitudes of stars are significantly less than what you'd see on GitHub, and so our GitHub is like, I don't know, like 1500 or something like that. And so we're working our way up there. But if we take a look at the repo, we can actually like glean a lot into how fast the project moves, how many people are able to contribute. And so we have like 49 pull requests or merge requests right now. And a lot of these are just partly because we just had a release. And so some people are like, who wanted to try and get their stuff into the release, just has like drafts and stuff ready, like that they might have hoped to get in beforehand. A lot of it is just because we're behind on going through and seeing what we can get merged. We have 383 issues, and okay, I got about 5 minutes, I think, until the end here. So I'll try to cover some other ideas. Well, okay, yeah. So one, just project meta, how we run the project. Every week we have a weekly meeting, Sundays at 1 p.m. EST, like where we are, and it's like I guess it would be like, yeah, at 6 o'clock GMT. And so like we mostly work off GMT time just because everybody can like relate to that pretty easily. But everybody's welcome to these meetings. And what we try to do is go through several issues each week, see if they should be worked on, should be closed, and then go through as well and make sure that any merge requests that could be ready and could just need someone at a meeting to look at it are looked after as well. And so this is sort of like how we do our product management, where we don't want to have like a lot of meetings every week that are like getting people to come out on like their work days and like add more overhead to them. But instead, by like grouping it onto the weekends and keeping it between half an hour and an hour, then we tend to have enough that we're like checking in with one another. We're not really giving, actually, yeah, I feel like in the past we might have tried giving like updates on how far we've gotten on something, but our intentions are never to see like where people are at. Like we never check in and see like, oh, like how much are you? Well, if it's like, we just want to see if we should look at like merging this or like reviewing it or something, but it's never an obligation for someone to have something ready on time, just because like that's way too much pressure for an open source project. And so yeah, we keep it pretty lean for sure. Not so much overhead. And one sort of thing that I want to maybe like leave this talk off at is the idea that so since we've been working on a project in open source for quite a long time, there's a lot of things that have kept us going. And this is like people coming in and working on the project, us showing off to places and seeing that it's very well received. And like one of our biggest milestones was one of the release parties, when like normally we'd have like I think like 20, maybe 30 people at a release party, and then one release party it jumped up to 80 people online. and all of the core developers are blown away by the fact that like our servers could handle so many people at once. And so that was like a very humbling thing to like to remember back to that time where like that was our aspirations, is that we're breaking through like crazy walls here, getting up to like 80 people, and now like we're like, okay, well, as many people who can come out to a release party and throw at um at the servers, that's what we're looking for. But I think another thing that has really helped us along over these last few years is so on our website we have a weekly dev blog, and so I'm like the main editor of this. And what I get is people from the community every week to just write what they've been working on. And so if I see like some big changes happened recently, I might reach out to someone and say, hey, can you write about this section? But for each of these blog posts, we've had one blog post every week for 159 weeks, more or less. Sometimes I like wait, like for example, I was supposed to put one out on Monday and today's Saturday. And so there is one for each week, and I like backdate it to like the day that it should be posted. So there's one for each week back 158 weeks, but or I guess 160 weeks. But as for when they come out, they're not on like a set schedule on that. You'll get a ping sometime during the week if you're on the Valorant server that has come out. But in each of these, we explore a lot of different either art that's being done, mechanics that are added, features that are added, graphics, a lot of this really fun stuff. So for example, Issa was working on playing with some like CSG shapes, and so this is like how we generate our cities and stuff like that. And here we have, oh, this is like a video of showing off like how waypoints are being done and stuff like that. And so this is a great opportunity to have people come in and show off, or like give people a platform to talk about what they've been doing. And so yeah, all this together, I suppose I could probably talk for like another hour on this topic. I thought my presentation was gonna be too short, and then I'd have to just talk about other stuff, but it turns out I'm like really good at talking about other stuff. And so okay, so we are at the end here. So I'm going to end it off here. If we have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I can't hear anybody on the Discord, and so if any of the Battle Royale leads want to send me anything to say on here, then feel free. But I think that's all, and so I'll end it off here. I'll extend an invite, of course, to if you want to participate in Valorant, you just want to see the development behind the scenes. On Valorant's website, there's a link to the Discord, probably like join us. Yeah, just join us, and then like the Discord link right here. And so you can come check out how the development's going. You can come participate yourself. We love having new people. We're trying to do Google Summer of Code right now. I think we put in our application, and we probably have like a post right here that's like some recommended projects and stuff like that. So go check that out if you're interested. Yeah, so thank you very much. And I don't know what the next action item is. We're not giving a talk anytime in the future. Come play Valorant. That's all. Thank you.